Chapter 328 Black Blood Saber. Han Li's confident words along with the self-assured manner in which he sat down with his azure talisman, inspired Chen Qiaoqian and Zhang Weiniang to do the same. They took out red and yellow treasure talismans respectively from their storage backs and silently sat down cross-legged to activate them. Chen Qiaoqian's senior martial brother and Song Ming looked at each other with a bitter smile. It wasn't as if neither of them had treasure talismans. Although Chen Qiaoqian's senior martial brother had his deceased Dao companion's blue treasure talisman, he was familiar with neither its power nor its usage. Naturally, he couldn't just take it out and recklessly use it. As for Song Ming's gray spear talisman, its power had been completely exhausted during the fight with the ice demon. As a result, the two could only insipidly wait for the three and protect them. At this moment, the Emperor of Yue realized that madly flying around like a housefly was ineffective and stayed motionless in midair. After he lowered his head and momentarily muttered to himself, he sinisterly took off the golden crown on his head and allowed his long, disheveled hair to flow in the wind and cover over half of his face. His increasingly demonic and mysterious appearance contrasted with the bloody light emitted from his body. He took in a deep breath and suddenly used a sharp fingernail to cut across on his wrist. Blood profusely poured out of the cut and merged with the bloody light on his body, causing it to suddenly darken, instantly turning it dark red. Although they were separated by such a large distance, the Yellow Maple Valley cultivators were still able to smell that bloody, vomit-inducing scent. Their faces slightly grimaced, but they could only bitterly continue to look on as the enemy casted his magic. Seeing that the color of his body's bloody light had finished its transformation, the Emperor of Yue opened his mouth, and spat out 2 streams of red chi toward his wrist. This unknown magic technique immediately stopped the bleeding and caused the deep wound to gradually fade away. However, his complexion was greatly paled from the loss of blood. With a stern expression, he took out a dull, jet-black hilt. The hilt was only half a foot long, but it appeared extremely worn and completely unremarkable. From the way the Emperor carefully handled the object, it didn't seem to be a useless item but rather extremely dangerous. As he rigidly stared at the hilt, he started to softly mutter an incantation. The incantation was neither loud nor easily understood. But from its slow chant, a faintly savage chi pervaded the air, which gave the others an impression of ancientness. What is he doing? As he watched this from far away, Song Ming couldn't help but ask with great surprise. I don't know, but it's likely that he's using a formidable magic technique. Chen Qiaoqian's senior martial brother said with worry. He was also unable to understand the words of the incantation. Although the two didn't understand what the enemy intended, from seeing him bleed himself, they knew that the Emperor of Yue had taken desperate measures and was giving it his all. As the two restlessly watched on, the cadence of Emperor of Yue's incantation grew quicker and that savage aura became progressively stronger. As the Emperor's eyes flashed with red light, an astonishing scene occurred. The hilt suddenly burst out into a ball black light and floated in midair. It rose about a foot above his head before remaining motionless. The Emperor of Yue grew increasingly cautious and formed strange hand seals one after another with exceptional skill. The bloody light on his body turned into strands of blood that hurriedly flew toward the floating hilt. At the start, there were only several strands of black blood. But not long after, the threads of blood proliferated, becoming 10, several tens and finally over 100 strands of black blood. Like moths to a flame, they all flew toward the hilt. In an instant, the hilt was densely enveloped in the threads of black blood. After wriggling for a moment, the threads condensed into a large sphere of corrupt blood, thoroughly wrapping the blade handle within. If one were to carefully look at this foul blood, one would notice a strange red radiance emitting from its otherwise dark appearance, leaving a demonic impression on one's soul. When the Emperor saw this scene unfold as he formed hand seals, he revealed a happy expression. He stopped his hand seals, intending to use a different technique. But as he did so, the sphere of black blood released a blinding black light and started squirming fiercely. Then, it started to boil and expand, appearing extremely unstable. Seeing this, the Emperor's expression of joy was completely replaced with one of fear. He frantically turned his head, looking in every direction, but when the Emperor once again laid eyes on the blood sphere, his face became misshapen by uncontrollable fear. His expression immediately became full of certainty, and he spit out a few profound incantations with a soft roar. He then fiercely bit off the tip of his tongue, and sprayed a mouthful of foul blood along with a chunk of his tongue toward the deformed sphere. Once the sphere of black blood absorbed this, it immediately stabilized and its dazzling radiance dimmed. Still uneasy, the Emperor of Yue formed over 10 rapid incantation gestures in a blur, leaving him out of breath. As a result, every bit of radiance from the blood sphere had disappeared. Then, the Emperor finally let out a breath of relief. However, having previously spit out blood essence, his appearance had suddenly aged over 10 years, becoming extremely haggard. Despite that, he was currently unable to attend to this issue. Instead, he suddenly cut off a chunk of his body's bloody light and sent it over to the bloody sphere. At the same time, he chanted once more in a deep voice, but because he no longer had the tip of his tongue, his words were unclear. The sphere of black blood gradually grew longer. Eventually, when the incantation was complete, the jet black hilt appeared once more with a blade created from black blood as its saber's edge. This newly formed saber emitted an astonishingly bloody chi. Upon seeing this saber, the Emperor of Yue appeared to become mad with passion. Without further hesitation, he reached out to grab the handle of this saber and casually waved it. Although he didn't reveal the slightest bit of its might, he still appeared to be extremely satisfied with it. After taking a deep look at the saber, the Emperor of Yue let out a long, sharp whistle, turning himself into a huge sphere of black light along with the saber. After which, he suddenly charged toward the bamboo forest, causing Song Ming and company to feel greatly nervous. But at that moment, Han Li opened his eyes and stared at the oncoming blood sphere with a cold gaze. Although Han Li had been activating his treasure talisman a moment ago, he had a clear understanding of his enemy's actions from his formidable spiritual sense. Previously, as the black blood saber had been taking form, Han Li's wandering spiritual sense had been strongly sucked in by the blade, which wanted to completely absorb it. With great fright, Han Li hastily withdrew his spiritual sense. Fortunately, the black blade's attempt to absorb his spiritual sense was autonomous and wasn't the doing of the Emperor of Yue. Thus, he was able to easily retrieve his spiritual sense from the black blade's grasp. Still, this fearful event had left Han Li drenched in cold sweat. If his spiritual sense had truly been absorbed by that evil saber, the consequences would be unspeakable. Although Han Li knew how fearsome the saber currently was, he remained completely confident in the strength of this hurriedly established 5-element reversal formation. After all, even Lei Wan, a core formation cultivator, said that it would be difficult to break through his original 5-element reversal formation. Even without completely setting up this upgraded, stronger version of the formation, he was completely confident that a foundation establishment cultivator would be unable to break through it in a short amount of time. Thus, although he had opened his eyes, his heart remained completely at ease. As these thoughts churned through Han Li's mind, the Emperor of Yue knocked against the multicolored barrier of light with great force. ZZ. The rainbow light barrier easily resisted the attacks. The Emperor of Yue had expected this and evilly grinned. He then tightly grasped the black blood saber in his hand and fiercely slashed at the rainbow light barrier. With a sharp whistle, a huge streak of black radiance surged from the saber. Swoosh! The astonishing black saber streak, which was over 30 meters long, had chopped off a large portion of the rainbow light, creating a 3-meter wide gap. When the Emperor saw this, he felt great joy and charged toward the gap without the slightest hesitation. With the incessantly flickering black streak in hand, he had actually entered the rainbow light. No. This is far from good. Song Ming immediately cried out in panic. Although the other idol senior martial brother didn't speak, he appeared far from okay, with an expression filled with worry. There is no need to be alarmed. That rainbow light is only the first layer of defense. This great formation isn't so easily broken. Having heard Han Li's indifferent voice, the pair calmed down and faintly smiled. Still, they were both greatly astonished that this junior martial brother Han had enough leftover concentration, while activating his treasure talisman, to pay attention to their conversation. How truly amazing! The Emperor of Yue had immediately charged over 30 meters into the barrier of rainbow light and had clearly seen the yellow Maple Valley cultivators beneath him. He was able to vividly see Han Li and two others activating their treasure talisman. He smiled sinisterly and flashed over 10 meters, appearing over where Han Li sat. With a light wave of his black blood saber, a black saber streak over 30 meters long chopped down.